A black waitress helped an elderly man every morning until his lawyers entered the restaurant, accompanied by four bodyguards looking specifically for her. The doorbell at Cafe Aurora, 8:47 a.m. But it wasn't the familiar sound that made Kayla stop what she was doing. It was the absolute silence that followed. Five men in black suits had just entered the small restaurant, and the tension in the air was so thick that even the sizzling of the frying pan stopped. Kayla Santos, 29, was cleaning a table when she looked up and saw something she would never forget. Four huge men, clearly security guards, flanked a gray-haired gentleman carrying an expensive leather briefcase. His eyes scanned the room until they found hers. "Are you Miss Kayla Santos?" asked the man with the briefcase, walking directly toward her. Kayla's heart raced. Problems with the law? Her mother's debts? She nodded timidly, unable to find her voice. The whole restaurant was now watching, Rosu in the kitchen, her boss Joaquin behind the counter, the few morning customers. "My name is Dr. Hamilton, attorney for the Whitmore family. I need to speak with you about Mr. Robert Whitmore." Kayla felt the floor shake beneath her feet. Robert, the quiet old man at table 7 who had been coming to the cafe every day for 2 years, who always arrived at 7:30 a.m., ordered black coffee and whole wheat toast, and never said more than a whispered good morning. The 78-year-old man for whom she had developed an inexplicable affection. Is he okay?" she managed to ask. Dr. Hamilton bowed his head slightly. "Mr. Whitmore passed away last night at home, in his sleep. He left very specific instructions about you." Kayla's legs buckled. Robert was dead. The old man she helped cut his toast because his hands trembled, whom she always served with an extra smile because she sensed his loneliness, who left a tip of exactly $2 every day, more than he could afford, but which she accepted because she knew it was important to him. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her eyes welling up, "but I don't understand why." "He left something for you," Dr. Hamilton interrupted, opening the folder. "Mr. Whitmore was, let's say, a very private person about his financial situation. You need to come with us now to the office." Joaquin approached, nervous. "Kayla, what's going on? She didn't do anything wrong." Dr. Hamilton smiled for the first time. "On the contrary, she did everything right." Kayla looked around the small cafe where she had worked for 4 years. The same place where she had faced looks of contempt for being the only black employee, where she had heard whispered comments about people like her serving food. The place where Robert had appeared one day and, unlike everyone else, treated her with the dignity she deserved. As she untied her apron with trembling hands, Kayla had no idea that the next few minutes would change her life in ways she could never have imagined in her wildest dreams. Because Robert Whitmore wasn't just a lonely old man, and his family was about to discover that underestimating a black waitress would be the biggest mistake of their privileged lives. If this story of kindness and unexpected secrets touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple gesture of humanity would turn into the most satisfying revenge against the deep-rooted prejudice of a millionaire family. Dr. Hamilton's office occupied 3 floors of a building in the city's financial center. Marble, dark wood, and a panoramic view that cost more than Kayla's annual salary. She felt tiny walking through the silent corridors, her worn sneakers making noise on the shiny floor. "This way, Miss Santos," said Dr. Hamilton, guiding her to a meeting room where 3 people were already waiting. And Kayla knew immediately that these were the people who would despise her most in the world. Seated in leather chairs that looked like thrones were Victoria Whitmore, a 50-year-old woman with a kind of cold beauty that comes from decades of privilege, her son Bradley, 28, wearing a suit that cost more than Kayla's car, and a young blonde woman she assumed was the daughter-in-law. Victoria barely looked up when Kayla entered. Bradley examined her from head to toe with an expression of barely concealed disgust. "Is this the person?" he asked, as if Kayla were some kind of exotic insect. "Bradley, please," murmured Dr. Hamilton. But Kayla noticed that even he seemed uncomfortable with her presence there. "Have a seat," instructed the lawyer, pointing to an isolated chair across the table. Kayla sat down, trying to ignore how she felt like a defendant in a courtroom. Dr. Hamilton opened a bulky folder. Mr. Robert Whitmore's will was registered 3 months ago when he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He chose not to inform his family about the disease. Victoria raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow, typical of Dad. Always dramatic until the end. He left specific instructions on how the reading should be conducted, Hamilton continued. First, for the family, the Beacon Hill Mansion, the 2 summer homes, the art collection valued at $12 million, and a $50 million trust fund to be divided equally between Victoria and Bradley. Kayla felt the breath escape her. $50 million. It was more money than she could even imagine. Bradley visibly relaxed. Well, at least the old man didn't completely lose his mind. However, Dr. Hamilton continued, and Kayla noticed a subtle change in his tone. There is a second part of the will that refers to the family business. Victoria frowned. What second part? Hamilton turned the page. The Whitmore Holdings restaurant chain, including 47 establishments in 6 states, the distribution center, and all related commercial assets, he paused, looking directly at Kayla, are left in their entirety to Miss Kayla Santos. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria turned pale as a sheet. Bradley literally choked. This is a mistake, Victoria said, her voice controlled, but with a hysterical note. It has to be a mistake. There is no mistake, Hamilton replied calmly. In addition, there is a $15 million operating fund earmarked exclusively for restaurant improvements and expansion, also under Miss Santos's complete control. Bradley exploded. That's ridiculous. She's a waitress. She didn't even know my grandfather. For the first time since she had arrived, Kayla found her voice. I did know Robert. Every day for the last 2 years. Robert. Victoria laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. Hello. By his first name, as if you were friends. We were friends, Kayla said firmly. He told me about his favorite books, about how he missed his wife, about how what? Bradley interrupted, leaning forward like a predator. Hello, my three wonderful people. How much money he had. The accusation hit Kayla like a slap. I didn't even know he had money. I thought he was just a retiree who... Please, Victoria said contemptuously. A black waitress at a cheap cafe doesn't get $80 million by chance. You knew exactly what you were doing. Dr. Hamilton slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Mr. Whitmore's instructions were clear. There is also a personal letter from Miss Santos. He handed Kayla a sealed envelope. With trembling hands, she opened it and began to read aloud. My dear Kayla, if you are reading this, then my time has come to an end. For 2 years, you were the only person who treated me like a human being, not a bank account. You didn't know that I owned the restaurant chain where you worked. You didn't know that I observed every gesture of kindness you showed, not only to me, but to all the customers. Victoria let out a snort of disbelief, but Kayla continued. In the last months of my life, I pretended to need help cutting my toast to test whether your kindness was genuine or calculated. You never asked anything personal, never treated me as a source of favors. When the young homeless man came into the cafe and you paid for his meal out of your own pocket, you didn't know I was watching. When you defended Rosa in the kitchen from that rude customer's harassment, you didn't know it reached my ears. Bradley and Victoria exchanged increasingly alarmed glances. My family will inherit my personal wealth, but my businesses will go to someone who understands that feeding people is about dignity, not just profit. Kayla, you have a heart that this family lost long ago. Use these resources to show the world that kindness and success can go hand in hand. Kayla finished reading with tears in her eyes. The silence in the room was thick as concrete. Finally, Victoria stood up abruptly. We're going to contest this. We're going to prove she manipulated him. Good luck, Dr. Hamilton said coldly. Mr. Whitmore spent 3 months documenting every interaction with Miss Santos. He hired private investigators to check her character. He has security footage, witnesses, complete records. This will is bulletproof against any challenge. Bradley slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. She doesn't know how to run a company. Mr. Whitmore appointed an advisory board to guide her, Hamilton replied. And he made it clear that any attempt at sabotage by the family would result in the complete revocation of their inheritance as well. Victoria looked at Kayla with pure hatred. You may have fooled a sick old man, but you won't last a week in the business world. We're going to destroy you. Kayla stood up slowly, feeling something new growing inside her. It wasn't fear, but a fierce determination she didn't know she possessed. You can try. As the Whitmore family stormed out of the room, leaving threats hanging in the air, Kayla remained seated, clutching Robert's letter. They saw her as an intruder, an unqualified opportunist. What they didn't know was that Kayla Santos had grown up in a neighborhood where every day was a struggle for survival, where she had learned that underestimating someone based on their appearance was the first step to her own downfall. And now, for the first time in her life, she had the resources to prove that kindness was not weakness. It was the most powerful weapon there was. Every look of contempt from the Whitmore family only reinforced a truth they would discover too late. When you underestimate someone who has nothing to lose, you give them everything they need to win. The next 2 weeks were like being forced to dive into the ocean when you barely know how to swim. Kayla found herself literally the owner of a restaurant empire she had no idea how to run, while the Whitmores worked tirelessly to make her life hell. The first meeting at Whitmore Holdings headquarters was an orchestrated humiliation. Bradley had summoned all the regional managers, 15 middle-aged white men wearing expensive suits and expressions of barely concealed contempt. Kayla entered the conference room wearing her best dress, purchased at a discount department store, and immediately felt like an intruder in hostile territory. Everyone, meet our new owner, Bradley said with a venomous smile. Kayla Santos, who comes to us directly from, where did you work again? Oh yes, serving coffee. The laughter was low but audible. Kayla sat down at the head of the table, the seat that was technically hers, and tried to ignore the exchange.
Have you always wondered what it's like to get slimed?
We're the Lucky Dog Contest team, and we're here to get slimes!
We are finally getting slimed today at the Nickelodeon Resort in Punta Cana. Very excited to get slimed. I'm curious about the intensity and the amount.
How was it?
It's so much dances between the managers. Well, Kayla, Bradley continued, leafing through a folder, as the new owner, I imagine you have some revolutionary ideas for improving our establishments. Perhaps serving stronger coffee. More giggles. Kayla took a deep breath and decided she wouldn't let herself be intimidated. Actually, I do have some observations. Bradley's smile widened, like a predator who sees his prey fall into the trap. Please enlighten us. I visited 7 restaurants in the chain over the last 10 days, Kayla began, her voice growing firmer. In 5 of them, I noticed that Black and Latino employees are concentrated in the kitchen and cleaning, while customer service is mostly white. In 3 locations, I witnessed managers treating employees of color clearly differently. The silence in the room changed tone. The smiles began to fade. Furthermore, Kayla continued, the menus are identical in neighborhoods with completely different demographics. The restaurant downtown charges $18 for a hamburger that costs $12 in the suburbs, even though the operating costs are virtually the same. Bradley tried to interrupt, but Kayla didn't stop. And there's more. Online reviews show consistent complaints about service quality that perfectly match the demographic location of the restaurants. Is it a coincidence that the worst reviews come from the neighborhoods where you put the least experienced employees? One of the managers, a man named Peterson, snorted. With all due respect, miss, running restaurants isn't about social issues. It's about profit. You're right, Mr. Peterson, Kayla replied calmly. And speaking of profit, your numbers in the Southern District have fallen 23% in the last year. Coincidentally, that's where you implemented that staff optimization policy that resulted in the dismissal of older, more experienced employees. Peterson turned pale. How did she know those specific numbers? The truth was that Kayla had spent the past 2 weeks studying like a woman possessed. Dr. Hamilton had made all the financial reports available to her, and she had discovered something that surprised her. She had a natural knack for analyzing data. Years of balancing her family's tight budget, calculating tips, and managing shifts at the cafe had developed a mathematical intuition she didn't even know she had. But more importantly, she had found an unexpected ally. Linda Chun had been the company's CFO for 12 years, a 45-year-old Asian American woman who had been systematically passed over for promotions despite her impeccable numbers. When Kayla asked to review the reports, Linda was initially cold and professional. But something changed when Kayla asked questions that went beyond the obvious. Why don't you invest more in training? Kayla had asked during her second visit to the office. Turnover costs are eating up 15% of net profit. Linda stopped typing and looked at her for the first time with genuine interest. You really read the reports. I read them 3 times, Kayla admitted. And there are some things that don't make sense. That's how Linda began to show Kayla the data that no one else saw. The inconsistencies, the strange patterns, the numbers that didn't add up. And that's how Kayla discovered that the Whitmore sabotage went far beyond hostile meetings. Bradley was actively undermining operations. Transfers of competent employees to worse positions, cancellation of contracts with efficient suppliers, artificial increase in expenses at certain restaurants. He was trying to make the company look unstable and poorly managed to justify a forced sale. He thinks you'll give up in a few weeks, Linda explained one evening after work, showing spreadsheets on the computer. The plan is to create an operational crisis, then offer to solve it by buying it back for a fraction of its value. And Victoria knows about this. Victoria is coordinating the legal side. They already have lawyers looking for loopholes in the will. Kayla felt a mixture of anger and determination growing inside her. And you? Why are you helping me? Linda laughed bitterly. Because I watched Bradley waste millions on innovations that anyone with 2 brain cells knew were going to fail. Because Victoria called me daddy's helper to my face when I questioned a dubious investment. And because, she hesitated, because Robert Whitmore hired me when no one else would give an Asian woman a chance in corporate finance. He believed in people others underestimated. It was then that Kayla realized she wasn't alone. Robert had left behind more than money and restaurants. He had left behind a network of loyal people who had been marginalized or ignored by the family. In the days that followed, Kayla began to meet these people. Marcus Williams, the black manager of the most profitable restaurant, who had been promoted to the worst performing location shortly after his arrival. Sophia Morales, a talented chef who had been prevented from implementing changes to the menu because she didn't understand the clientele. James Park, a digital marketing specialist who had suggested campaigns targeting diverse communities and was ridiculed in meetings. They all had something in common. They were competent, dedicated, and systematically sabotaged by the Whitmores. Robert talked to us, Marcus said during a discreet lunch. Not officially, but he knew. He asked questions, he observed. I think he was documenting everything. Documenting what? How the family treated employees. How they wasted money. How they were destroying the company he built from the inside. It was Sophia who gave him the most important clue. There's a safe in his office. It was never opened after his death. The lawyers said only you have authorization. That night, Kayla was alone in Robert's old office on the executive floor. The safe was hidden behind a painting, a combination Dr. Hamilton had given her in a sealed envelope. Inside, she found something that made her heart race. Years of discreet recordings, conversations, meetings, phone calls. Robert had meticulously documented every questionable decision, every prejudiced comment, every example of the family's mismanagement. There was more. Private investigations into Bradley and Victoria's personal finances. Reports on shell companies, offshore accounts, and what appeared to be a complex money laundering scheme using the restaurants as a front. My God, Kayla whispered, leafing through documents that showed how millions of dollars had been embezzled over the years. Her phone vibrated. A message from Bradley. I hope you're enjoying playing businesswoman. Next week we have a meeting with investors interested in buying. I'm sure they'll make an offer that even you will understand. Kayla smiled for the first time in days. They really thought she was just a scared waitress playing with grown-up things. They had no idea that they had just declared war on someone who now had enough ammunition to destroy not only their reputations, but their freedoms. As she carefully organized the evidence Robert had left behind, Kayla felt something growing inside her. She was no longer the intimidated girl who had left the courthouse a few weeks ago. She was a woman who finally understood that Robert had not only given her a company, he had given her the tools to prove that underestimating someone because of their background was the first step towards self-destruction. Bradley's meeting with investors would be in 5 days. He expected to present a company in crisis, managed by an incompetent, ready to be sold for pennies. What he didn't know was that Kayla had spent the last few weeks not only learning how to run a business, but figuring out how to completely dismantle the life of anyone who tried to take away what was rightfully hers. Because when you grow up surviving in a world that constantly doubts your ability, you learn a truth that privileged people will never understand. The difference between appearing strong and being truly dangerous is that the second option comes with evidence, allies, and a plan so well crafted that when it is finally revealed, it is too late for any defense. The meeting with potential investors was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the executive lounge on the 30th floor. Bradley had chosen the location strategically, a room with a panoramic view of the city, an imported marble table, and an air of power that he believed would intimidate any waitress who was out of place. Kayla arrived 5 minutes early, carrying a simple briefcase and accompanied only by Linda Chun. The 5 investors were already seated, middle-aged white men in expensive suits, with the cynical looks of people who were there to make a quick and lucrative deal. "Gentlemen," Bradley announced with his most charming smile, "allow me to introduce our current owner, Kayla Santos. As you can see, she is a little overwhelmed with the responsibilities of the company." Victoria, elegant in her designer suit, added with feigned sympathy, "Poor thing, she really tried. But running a restaurant empire isn't like serving coffee, is it, dear?" Kayla sat calmly at the head of the table, the place that was rightfully hers. "Thank you for coming, gentlemen."
This is Australia's #1 collagen brand, and here's why. Nature's Way beauty shots are made with type 1 and 3 hydrolyzed collagen peptides, which are designed to boost collagen from within, where creams unfortunately just can't reach. In just 28 days, collagen helps women reduce fine lines, improve skin firmness and elasticity, and support hair and nail strength.
Before we talk about any sale, I believe you deserve to know some facts about the company you are considering buying. Bradley laughed. "Kayla, please. You gentlemen aren't here to hear theories from an employee. You're here to do serious business." "You're right, Bradley," Kayla agreed, opening her briefcase. "Serious business requires complete transparency. For example, did you know that in the last 18 months, $2.3 million has simply disappeared from the financial reports?" Bradley's smile faltered slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Kayla distributed copies of documents to the investors. Transfers to offshore accounts, overpriced contracts with shell companies, fake invoices, all signed by Bradley Whitmore. Mr. Henderson, the lead investor, leafed through the papers, his interest clearly piqued. "These numbers don't match the reports we received." "Because the reports you received were doctored," Kayla replied. Linda connected a laptop to the room's projector. "Dr. Hamilton, may you come in, please?" The door opened and the lawyer entered carrying a box of evidence. Victoria instantly turned pale. "What the hell is going on here?" Bradley exploded, standing up abruptly. "Justice," Kayla said simply. The first recording appeared on the screen. It was Bradley's unmistakable voice on a phone call. "I need the sales in the Southern District to look terrible. Cancel the contracts with the cheap suppliers and hire those friends of ours who charge triple. When the waitress realizes she's in the red, she'll want to sell quickly." The room was deathly silent. Victoria tried to get up, but Dr. Hamilton gently stopped her. "Please remain seated. There's much more." The second recording showed Victoria instructing accountants to manipulate reports. The third revealed explicitly racist conversations about Kayla. The fourth documented how they had bribed suppliers to deliberately deliver low-quality products to restaurants after Robert's death. "My God," murmured one of the investors. "You were sabotaging your own company to force a fraudulent sale." Bradley was sweating visibly now. That was taken out of context. She's trying to frame us." "Context?" Kayla smiled coldly. "What context justifies this?" A security video from the office appeared on the screen, showing Bradley destroying important documents 3 days after Robert's death. His voice was clear. "Burn everything. The little black girl can't find out the real numbers." Victoria finally exploded. "You recorded private conversations. That's illegal." "Actually," Dr. Hamilton interjected, "all of these recordings were made by Robert Whitmore himself on his private property and in his personal office. places where he had every legal right to record. He had suspected for years that you were stealing from him. Henderson looked at his fellow investors. Gentlemen, I believe we have no interest in a company involved in financial fraud. Wait. Bradley shouted desperately. She's lying. She's a manipulator. A what, Bradley? Kayla asked calmly. Go ahead. In front of all these respectable gentlemen, tell me exactly what you think I am. Bradley opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water, knowing that any words he uttered would only confirm the prejudice that the recordings had already exposed. Kayla stood up elegantly. Gentlemen, as you can see, Whitmore Holdings is very well managed. The problem was never management. It was internal sabotage. Now that that has been resolved, our growth projection for the next 5 years shows a 300% increase in profitability. Linda presented the real numbers. Without the Whitmore's manipulation, the company was incredibly solid and profitable. Therefore, Kayla continued, I am no longer interested in selling, but I have an alternative proposal. She smiled, and for the first time, it was a smile that made Bradley instinctively recoil. I am buying your share of the inheritance. I can offer $5 million for each of your shares. $5 million. Victoria exclaimed. Our inheritance is worth $50 million. Was worth, Dr. Hamilton.
So apparently being a bride-to-be is like 20% excitement and 80% writing lists. And yes, my big pen is glued to my hand at this point. You know I had to take my pen along when dress shopping to make sure I took notes on every single dress, every fit, and every almost the one moment, because my brain at this point can't be trusted.
And corrected. Before the evidence of fraud that has just been presented. With criminal proceedings underway, a federal investigation for money laundering, and the public exposure that is about to happen, your stake in the company isn't even worth that. Kayla opened a sealed envelope. Gentlemen investors, you may be interested to know that I have already delivered copies of all this evidence to the FBI, the IRS, and the New York Times. The story comes out tomorrow morning. Bradley's face was red as a tomato. You can't do this to us. We're family. Family, Kayla laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Family doesn't try to destroy the company the patriarch built. Family doesn't steal. And family certainly doesn't use expressions like little black girl when they think no one is listening. Victoria tried one last card, her mask of civility finally falling completely. You may have these recordings, but no one will accept a person like you running a serious company. You don't belong in this world. Kayla looked around the room, at the investors who now watched her with obvious respect, at Linda who smiled proudly, at Dr. Hamilton who nodded approvingly. You're right, Victoria. I don't belong in.
Well, it looks like it didn't go as planned. Oh well. Pity it didn't go as planned because I really wanted to see if anybody would talk at all. But not at all. Oh well. Thank you for stopping by, everyone. You all have a good day. Night. Bye all.